And welcome to Ahlulbayt TV Fatima special, where we are remembering the martyrdom of Lady Fatima Zahra salam alayha through these coming weeks. And we will be having shows every Saturday night, inshallah, throughout this season as we remember the details of her martyrdom and also reflect upon aspects of her personality and character and think about what we can learn from that and benefit from in this day and age where things are changing so fast. In tonight's program, we're going to be reflecting upon Lady Fatima Zahra salam alayha and various streams of feminism that are in the world today that have been circulated in the media and obviously written about by scholars and thinkers. And my guest to talk about this is Benin Mirali, who many of you will have known over many years for her hard work in the community. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Thank you for giving us your time.
Thank you for having
me. The subject of feminism is actually quite complex because it's gone through so many phases, and it seems that nowadays even people who say that they are feminist can't agree on what feminism is. Also, we find, or I have been observing in the younger generations of Muslims in their 20s and 30s, in the name of seeking to redress very real issues in relation to women, some of their struggles, there's a kind of a tendency towards an imbalance where it's kind of swinging the other way, where now even Muslim men are kind of feeling a bit hesitant about being chivalrous or taking care of the family, you know, the kind of role that men have had for millennia. And they're starting to be a bit hesitant about that in case they get told that they're sexist or they're anxious to kind of be politically correct. In your view, do you think that Muslims have a correct understanding of what feminism is?
I don't think so. I think because many years we've got these gender roles that have been shaped and distorted. I think they're distorted by social programming and manipulation, particularly by men. I think they have abused their positions of authority. So maybe there is this sort of backlash, and this backlash comes, and we want somewhere we've forgotten who we are as women. I was reading up on feminism because that's the topic I was given, and I was mildly surprised because I had in my head this picture of a feminist who was somebody who was aggressive, was assertive, was a man-hater, who burnt their underwear, who went on protests, march, and it was a stereotype, and it was wrong. Because the more I read and the more I saw, I think the basis of feminism today, or the basis of feminism, was always what Islam said.
Right.
There is gender equality, but not sameness.
Okay.
But I think this programming has made us forget who we are, and we want to be like men. It's never going to happen.
Yes, I mean, I think this is perhaps, as you say, Islam wants gender equity, we could say maybe, gender equity, and also people in secular society also would like that. And perhaps the issue has been since the 70s in the West that, like you say, women have thought that gender equity means competing with men in an economic system that has been constructed by men.
That's right.
I remember listening to an interview with Faye Weldon, which many of our viewers probably won't know, but she was one of the kind of pioneering feminists. She's English, pioneering feminists of the 70s, and she's now returned back to Christianity. She said something quite interesting in her interview, that she said feminism is for people in their 20s and 30s, and that when we were young and campaigning in the way that we were, we didn't think about children. We didn't think about the children. I was reading an article the other day about female pop star, and it was actually an article from an academic journal that was analysing 2 women in the mainstream media, and one of them was taking one of these female pop stars, and she said that the writer said that this female pop star has demonstrated that you don't need a husband, you don't need a man. And this has very much been a kind of a trend. I remember reading again about another woman who was raising her son deliberately to have no father, because she didn't want him to have any male role models around. So it seems that I don't know whether this is feminism itself, or whether feminism has been hijacked by other people who just want men ironed out of the picture.
I believe it's been hijacked.
Right.
Because I think true feminism always believed in gender roles being identified, and identified on a level where there was equality but not sameness, as I mentioned before. And I think if we go back to Islam, because that's what we're talking about, I think the mandates for men and women are so clearly laid out. Because women have not been in the spotlight, and therefore not named, and therefore maybe not, their work has not been highlighted.
Yeah.
But any woman who laid the foundation of her family, I mean, she's phenomenal, way above any man could do, even go to space.
Yeah.
Because you've only got to look around and see where there's that foundation lacking in the family, and you know that there's a woman not being there.
Right.
Having said that, that doesn't mean you don't need the men. I mean, they're the protectors, they're the maintainers. You can't change that. She nurtures. I think Rumi said, what one throws down, the other nurtures.
Right.
And it needs both of them there. I agree with you. It's hijacked totally. It's ridiculous.
Right. I think that's important in terms of, I mean, I think that just doesn't seem to be, as you say, a clear definition of what feminism is. And in our Muslim communities, they're feeling, there's so much talk about it that they're feeling under pressure to kind of, even Muslim men, to say, I'm a feminist, you know, very, very proudly, maybe not without understanding what it is.
Absolutely.
And as you say, it's a tricky issue, because there are real issues of women not having their Islamic rights observed and being restricted or being confined or not understood in the name of Islam. So like you say,
the foundation of a family. I think for these roles, these mandated roles that we have, both genders need to be educated. Very, very rarely do you find the rights of women or the responsibilities of men towards women, let me just change the way it is said, talked about, because it's scary. I remember one particular majlis that I was reading on or reciting, and I remember saying something like, she doesn't have to cook or clean or even nurse her children.
Yeah.
That, you know, that she doesn't have to do that. Oh my goodness, the uproar.
right.
But it's got to be understood in the context it's said.
Yes.
She's not a slave.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, there's got to be an understanding of a family basis there. And that is why I think the life of Fatima Zahra alayha salam is phenomenal. Because the way she and Imam Ali worked together, and if we see them as role models, we've got to learn about them.
Yeah.
And take, I think, put everything else aside, because like Quran says, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. These are our examples. So if we looked at their lives, learnt from them, and propagated them, I think the outside world would take into them too.
Yeah.
Because she was everything. She was a feminist in its true sense, because
Right.
she stood for the rights of everyone. She wasn't just somebody who sat at home and maybe didn't educate. She was highly educated, just phenomenal. You just have to listen to her khutbah to know that.
Yeah.
So I think we need to go back to basics and go to the people that are most how can I say this? Those that stand out as role models for us and take from them. Because if we go outside, I mean, they're like the wind.
Yeah.
It changes every 2 minutes.
True.
1 minute feminism is underwear burning and protesting.
Yeah.
1 minute it's standing up for rights, and the next minute it's something completely different.
Yeah, yeah. I think also the difference between Lady Fatima Zahra salam alayha and maybe many of women who have campaigned over the decades is that, I mean, another component of feminism, at least from maybe the 60s, 70s and 80s, is that the spiritual dimension of a woman was never considered. So a lot of them were Marxists, or you know, they hate religion, that, you know, and although they have a very stereotypical idea of religion, so part of it has also been to you know, stamp out we could say not only what they perceive to be the oppressive aspects of religion, but also the spiritual component of a woman. And of course, we've also got this, well, I could possibly call it a deception, the wrong idea that to be sexually liberated is also empowering. And that's been a popular idea for the last few decades as well. So, and so that's where the kind of aggression comes in. There's a kind of this confrontation, you know, this need to confront all the time. And I've often wondered, well, okay, so after you've confronted, then what? You know, people who spend 2-3 decades confronting what they see as patriarchy, or you know, confronting the church or confronting men or people. Okay, you've done your confronting, now what? And so there's a kind of tendency to be destructive, as in we want to break down, you know, all this patriarchal system, and it's like, well, what comes after that? So far, it seems to be a mess.
Let me look at it in a different way, okay? So we're followers of Fatima Zahra, and, you know, phenomenal personality, but we're a bit hypocritical, because on one side we have this culture, and sometimes culture needs to be confronted, not in that aggressive way, but in a way that maybe she teaches. I come from a community which is phenomenal, but still has a little bit of this patriarchal basis in it, which is not, all of it's not wrong, but there is an element which is of a sort of men first nature, rather than equality. And I think that needs confrontation, but confrontation in the right way. And maybe when you see what's happening outside, their confrontation may be a little bit not disciplined, but we need disciplined confrontation, because there's a lot of families, and I think too many, where women are bullied, where women are not allowed to be themselves. They're not allowed to be what God intended them to be able to reach their personal best in all aspects of their life. So I think maybe the feminists did some good in sparking off a desire to want to confront that which was wrong. And nobody wants to talk about it because we're all scared of the men. I love them to bits, but there is an aspect which needs to be confronted and looked at, because if we are followers of Fatima Zahra, then we need to follow that. If you look at some of the things that Imam Ali told her, they were phenomenal. I've got, you know, I have some written down where he says, when he tells her that she never upset me, I never upset her, I never demanded anything of her, she didn't demand anything of me. Now to say that to, I'm a Khoja and I love being one, say that to a Khoja man. You know, to come in and say, rather than, where's my tea? Excuse me, could you please make me a cup of tea? It just requires a little bit of being a Muslim. And
simple answer, really.
Absolutely right. And I think sometimes that sort of confrontation needs to be done from the mimbars, from the community to be able to assist the women who don't have a voice, giving a voice to the voiceless. After all, Quran did say about the Day of Judgment in Surah Al-Taqweer, when it talks about newborn buried infants, وَإِذَا مَعُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ, for what sin was I killed? It's the same thing. A lot of these women are so oppressed. You know, it's like, that's not what we were about. That's not what Fatima Zahra was about.
Also, what I have noticed in our communities is that obviously, I mean, you know, a myriad of family issues and emotional issues, psychological issues, and there's a culture obviously of not talking about it, which used to be very much the culture of Britain as well, again probably up till the 1970s, a culture of just not discussing issues and problems. So it's not just in the Muslim community. But what I have found is that, as an example, when I've been asked to speak on an issue at an event, I'll speak on it, and then I've had women come up to me afterwards and say, you said what we can't say. And I think, but you must say it. You know, you can't wheel someone in and get them to say it. You're involved, you need to say it. But like you say, there is this fear of being exposed, or I suppose, fear of being exposed.
Fear of losing your position at home. Fear of, you know, it's a fear of the unknown. It's very difficult to speak. When you've not spoken for 20, 30 years, then to stand up and say something, it doesn't work. Most of the people I know who come and speak about such issues will say, I can't say anything. If I do, it's going to cause a riot at home, and I want peace at home.
Yeah.
And so they're sacrificing their God-given right to reach their full potential by staying silent. And I think maybe it's programs like these, or programs that on television that both genders will watch, that hopefully will spark some sort of thinking.
Yes, that's the aim. We hope, inshallah. I mean, I've also noticed something quite interesting that people do say about Lady Fatima, salam alayha. You know, they often quote this narration about how she said, the best thing for a woman is not to be seen. And I spoke to a scholar, a female scholar actually, about that. And she said that, first of all, that narration is in Sunni collections. You don't find it in Shia collections. Secondly, we forget that Lady Fatima Zahra, salam alayha, she was on the battlefield, nursing the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him. So, yes, she appeared in front of Abu Bakr, you know, completely concealed and with her companions, and spoke to him from behind a screen. But at the same time, she can't have done that on the battlefield. And we have this other place where, you know, event where again the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, was in Salah. He'd had animal entrails thrown at him, and she went and cleaned them off. So he didn't say to her, go back inside, because you're not supposed to be seen. So she must have been seen, because there are, you know, we had the little that we have of her life shows that there were places and times when she would have had to have been seen. And this obviously, I think, it's funny how people are quite selective in the narrations that they pick. I mean, I've had this with regard to teaching, and I know that my colleagues at Ahlulbayt TV have had that with regard to just being on TV talking about issues, that you get that narration quoted at you. But actually, when we look at the life of Fatima Zahra, salam alayha, she wasn't totally concealed. I don't know what your views are on that.
Exactly what you're saying. Right. I get it at me all the time.
Okay.
And I think it's not only with this issue, it's absolutely every other issue. We pick and choose what suits us at the right time, at the right place. So maybe your voice is too soft, maybe it's supposed to be a bit harsher. You get all these issues coming up. And sometimes I feel it's insecurities within the person who's addressing it rather than with ourselves. So they need to look inside themselves and try and resolve what's going on. I don't pay much heed to them, I'm afraid, because I think in today's age especially, we've got a job to do.
Yeah.
And it's really important we do that job without having to worry about people. As long as our scholars have given us the go-ahead, we always refer back to them. And as long as they're comfortable with what we're doing, which they are, otherwise they wouldn't do any of this, then we're okay. And we do refer to them all the time. I mean, I can't stress enough that anything that you're feeling a little bit, if I can say, unsure about, by all means, go and ask them.
Yeah.
And none of them have ever objected against anybody teaching or being on television or anything like that. There's no lewd behavior, but what's the problem?
Yeah.
You know?
And again, just dropped my pen. Again, I mean, as the sisters on this channel have double-checked, triple-checked with all the scholars, and they have said that as long as you're observing hijab, then it's permissible.
Let me sound like a feminist. Women make the best teachers. They're nurturers. It is in them. They know how to teach. You know, scholars, men, awesome. But when it comes to teaching, I think you cannot beat a mother's lap. You cannot beat women because they have a way. Yeah. They've been endowed with being able to nurture and teach. The patience they have is far more than any man will ever have. Yes, usually, inherently, there's a great patience for the children in raising the children. We also find today, if we're thinking about how, you know, the beautiful relationship between Lady Fatima Zahra and Imam Ali alayhi salam, and again, many people will say, well, how can we match them? We are not them, and so on. But I think we can still take some objective points from how they interacted as a husband and wife. And what I have, again, learned in speaking to many people who have appeared on here as well, is that because of this age of social media and texting and so on, as one young man said when he came on a few years ago about a show, we were saying, well, what are some of the main issues that that young people are finding with regard to marriage? And he said, people don't know how to communicate anymore. They don't. I think the most wonderful quote you have from Imam Ali was that we were like two pigeons in a cocoon. And I picked that all the time. In fact, we've depicted it. We've put these two pigeons near each other. And I always tell them, why don't you Google about pigeons? Now, pigeons don't have a phone with them. And pigeons talk all the time. They don't hide behind a newspaper. They don't watch television. They just make a, well, heaven of a noise when they're together. And you're absolutely right. You've hit the nail on the head. We find, and we run a service on Q Fatima called Cupid, which is matchmaking. And you find people can talk 9 to the dozen on texts, on whatever, Instagram, whatever they're doing, the whole lot, the whole social media thing. But when they meet each other, they're lost for words. Or they're talking so much, they don't let the other person put a word in edgeways. So I think the art of conversation, of physically being together, is something we need to nurture. And I continually say this, you know, two pigeons, because it's a beautiful image in the head. You know, put everything aside and, you know, just talk. Even if it is telepathizing or silent talk, but without everything else around you. We're too used to all these gadgets. I think you're right. I mean, I think also, because my work, and I'm sure many other people's work, involves a lot of very intensive time on the laptop, hours of thinking, researching, reading articles, reading books. And I would say even for myself, I've noticed over the years that when it comes to having a conversation with a person, you're so used to having a conversation in your head on the computer, that when it comes to having a conversation with a person, it starts to feel unnatural. It does, doesn't it? Yeah. I visit people in homes, especially senior citizens, and I sit with them, and very often people tell me, I want to come with you. I want to do this social work. And I go, great. Or in hospital. People who've been in hospital, obviously been there long term, it's quite difficult for them. And when I take, especially young people with me, you can see they're itching to get out because they don't know how to hold a conversation. They will ask about the weather, typical English. They will, and then they get stuck. And then they might talk about Brexit, and that's it. And then what? But really, we need to relearn exactly what Imam Ali said. You know, 2 pigeons in a cocoon means when you get home, you're conversing.
Yeah.
Even to have 1 meal a day together with your family, I think it's so important. TV dinners have sort of taken over everything. Maybe just start again.
Yeah.
At basics.
I remember someone I knew went to United States and stayed with a family, and they said that they observed that this was a non-Muslim family. They never ate together. Mm. So the children would come in the kitchen, have something to eat. The parents would come in, have something to eat. And I know in many families as well, and I'm sure my full sympathy goes out, because it's just about getting things done efficiently. And I'm sure I'm not the one to speak, but it's just an observation that often it's like, let's feed the kids first, have them around the table, eat, finish, and then we can eat. So, so again, there isn't that interaction between the children, maybe even, you know, if we're talking about male-female relations in the light of Lady Fatima Zahra salam alayha and the Ahlulbayt, you know, sons and daughters bonding with mother and father, you know, together, like you say.
I think it's so important. My husband's one of those phenomenal people who keeps people together. Okay. And now, I mean, children have gone now, one's at home, but when they were home, and they still come once a week, all of them come, I think we've solved all our family issues, in inverted brackets, on the dinner table.
Right.
And having sat together, we don't accept everything they say, but we will listen to everything. You may not condone it, but you will have your view about it, and they will listen. And then once the situation is over, he never goes back to it, which is beautiful. He will never allow language that is not suitable on the dinner table. And those things were so important. I think they've held the children together. So once a week now, even though they're in different places, they will come, get together, everybody sits together, all 14, 15, whatever, whoever comes, they're all together. And he will cook, by the way. And it's beautiful. Yeah. Because I think you stick by what you've been told to talk.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And we're just going to go to break. You're watching Ahlulbayt TV, and this is a reflection upon Lady Fatima Zahra salam alayha in the Fatimiyya period. And inshallah, we will be back after the break. Welcome back to Ahlulbayt TV Fatimiyya special, where we are remembering the martyrdom of Lady Fatima Zahra salam alayha and reflecting upon her character in light of events today, in this very fast moving day and age that we are living in, with new issues coming up all the time, and how Ahlulbayt alayhim salam can act as an anchor within the shifting sands of our world and of our society. We were just talking about Fatima Zahra salam alayha in terms of her relationship with Imam Ali alayhi salam, and how they had a very good communication, very good bond with each other. And this is so important for marriage, as we know, cultivating good communication, which isn't always easy, especially in a very pressured world we live today. And you were going to go over some aspects of her life that we can reflect on.
I think if we look at her life, it wasn't an easy life. And very often I find young people today blaming everything either on their parents or something that happened to them. And we sort of stick to that and say, that's why I'm so and so. So let me just quickly go over her life. So look at, she's born in a hostile environment. Nobody liked her mom. I mean, they loved her before, but just because she married her father, they didn't like her. So there's a hostile environment. Then they're in Shibi Abi Talib, the valley, where she probably learned how to toddle there. And I'm just taking imagination and watches this young girl or this young baby trying to learn how to walk and talk in an environment where people are scared, where they've been exiled. Then we find she loses her mother. And that must have been horrific.
Yeah.
But then we find her father, who becomes mama and dad. And we find her walk, and he didn't protect her from the environment. He actually took her out. We see him her with him when abuse is hurled at him, when the entrails are thrown at him, and we find this little girl moving all these entrails out, clearing it, and healing him. And he calls it Abiha, the mother of her father. So she's gone through, I mean, immense hardship.
Yeah.
And then we find the hijrah. And I was reading a narration whereby that even during the hijrah, she was attacked by someone. And that remained in the minds of the Prophet and Imam Ali. And they actually did, when I say avenge it, went after the person who attacked her. So these are narrations I read, but she went through a tough time. And then she's got, you know, she's got married to Imam Ali, and I think that is where the crux lied. It's the families, that strong family unit that she created that gave her the courage to stand up politically, to stand up to go to the battlefield, as you mentioned. All that came because of this strong family unit. And I strongly believe what Fatima Zahra teaches us is the ability to create the foundation of a family life.
Right. And again, I mean, I remember, you know, obviously years ago coming into Islam in my 20s where, you know, I had grown up in an environment, like I'm sure many girls are growing up today, where all the focus is on, and it sounds great, all the focus is on your education, your studies, your career, but somehow along the line, that comes at the expense of knowing how to create a family. And actually having the skills to do that. So now we've got maybe a lot of very talented women who are doing great things in a career, but now we have created a society where it's very difficult to settle down, and not just because of the women, but because the society is moving so fast, because people are so busy, and again, we were talking about problems with communication. So building that family unit has become so difficult for people. It's become almost like a impossible dream. That they can't find it. They can't, you know. And when I came into Islam, and I observed how still the family is very important, very central, and that to be a mother is not looked down upon. I mean, it was long looked down upon in a secular society. Oh, I'm just a mother, you know, people would apologize, I'm just a mother. Whereas in Islam, it's not looked down upon, it's held highly.
Well, al-jannatu tahta aqdamu ummahatikum. If Jannah is under the feet of mothers, it's about the only profession, I'll call it a profession, where Jannah appears. I don't think it appears in anybody. I don't think that tradition has not been repeated for men of any standing, not even prophets.
Yeah.
But it talks about a mother. And maybe I'm old-fashioned. I turned 60 last year. So maybe I'm old-fashioned. But I don't think you can have it all. I really don't. I think you end up burning yourself out if you want to have it all. You've got to find the right balance. If you are a career person, then so be it. Then I think you really have to wonder, how am I going to raise this family? Unless you have a really good support system of grandmas and so on and so forth. And yes, that is possible. But is it there? Does it exist? If it doesn't, then you really have to make a choice. I think when we try to have it all, we're working at something that we're not. And then there's stress, then there's all these mental illnesses that come up, or the family suffers. So you're either harming yourself or you're harming another human being. And I think that's grossly disrespectful and unjust.
Unjust to the children.
Absolutely, absolutely. I just don't think you can have it all. So you really got to think about it. We've all got a choice. I mean, God's given us a choice in this life. But I think in life, you've got to make a choice of what will take you into the hereafter as well. So everything you do here, I think, should translate over there. And to me, this sentence which says, Al-Jannatu tahta aqdamu ummahatikum, my goodness. So Jannah is under the feet of mothers. Why would I even choose anything else? I could, and it doesn't matter if I'm not a biological mother to someone. I could mother somebody else too.
I was talking with a colleague a few weeks ago, and she said, again, just in terms of nurturing what she had started to do, she's trained as an accountant, and she was volunteering to go and speak to the elderly. In fact, you were just talking about speaking to the elderly before the break. She was volunteering to go to give company to the elderly, and she said, I've stopped telling people what I do, because her contemporaries, she's in her 30s, her contemporaries are saying, "Oh, you know, what? But you're trained as an accountant. You could do such great things. What are you doing talking to old people for?" I'm thinking, what happened to the values of Islam? What happened to, about building a society based on love and compassion? And yeah, to the point that, you know, she was really looked down on, to the point that she said she stopped telling people that she does that, which I think is a great shame. So, and again, I was quite, okay, you know, when I was growing up, yes, the focus is on your career, but now it seems that the focus is on the career to the point that, you know, you've got to be earning a certain amount. I've heard this in Canada particularly, where women are expected to be a CEO, and if you're not a CEO, then you're nothing, which we don't have so much over here. I don't think there's that pressure to be a CEO, but there's still a pressure to, you know, like we say, be a dentist, be an accountant. But I didn't realise to the extent that that aim is where the desire to care for someone is now kind of not understood.
But you're a CEO of a family.
Yeah.
Where you're affecting souls that will rule the world. I mean, they're the ones who are the future.
Yeah.
To be the CEO of a family is phenomenal. And you can grow that company to as big as you want. You know, you can put in a structure, and once you can manage your own, you can invite so many others into it and assist them. To me, I don't think there's any other role that is better than that. And I think it just needs a little bit of reflection. Men were meant to protect, provide. They were supposed to go out and, you know, go to the jungle and find the meat, basically. But they were supposed to come home, and the woman was supposed to nurture. And there's nothing wrong in going back to basics and believing in that. It doesn't make you any smaller. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be educated. I really honestly believe that women need to be educated. Definitely. You cannot be the CEO of this phenomenal structure that rules the universe, because, I mean, every family is a microcosm of this universe, and, you know, it translates into harmony. And I think where that's broken, that's where it all goes wrong.
Yeah, very much.
And we're so scared of saying it for fear. Somebody will say, "Oh, you're old-fashioned. Like you said, you're just a mom. You don't understand the thrills of being a career person. You're not bringing any money in." Are you serious? You could have all the money in the world, but if you don't have the right nurturing qualities for that family, you will spend all that money trying to get that child back to where you wanted him to. I think I read somewhere that people sort of ruin their health to gain money. And then they use their money to regain their health again. So I'll go back to mental health. If that's what you do to your family, you'll have to use all that money again. I was in workshop, the institution we have on a Saturday. I've seen young children also telling me that they have to go to see therapists. Now, for me, that is... I mean, yes, if it's necessary, they have to go. But surely there is something that is not quite right here.
Definitely. Definitely, and they say that
a balance that needs to be addressed.
Depression in young people is on the rise, and I was on a train once listening to some girls talking. Well, I wasn't listening; they were talking. You know, you could hear them talking. But one of them, I think she was 13, and she was saying, well, she was on antidepressants, and you just think, yeah, because the heart of this society has been taken out. There's no heart in it. There's no foundation.
You need families and you need communities, and we're quite, you know, as a Khoja, I think I'm really thankful for the way we've built a community. And that community, where there's a lack of family support, the community's always been there. And it's also, I think, endorsed and strengthened family when they are there. But where that's lacking, we can see it. You just have to turn around and have a look. And I think when you look at Fatima al-Zahra and you look at her life, this is what she teaches. It's that unit, and she brings in dignity into something that we put down.
Yeah.
We've actually put down family life as well. That's just sort of a sidekick.
Yeah.
That's got to be our focus.
Also, actually, what's just come to mind is, as we know, she was called the mother of her father, and we don't have a lot of information on how she was with her own mother, Lady Khadija, salam alayha. But also we are finding, and I'm hearing this a lot from people communicating with me, saying that my son or my daughter is not interested in spending time with us. I've talked to a few parents who say this, that they're always out, they see us as, again, old-fashioned and backward, and they don't want to spend time. And I was talking to one lady and I said, what people are going through, what Muslims are going through, is what Western families went through. That your child, in the non-Muslim families, your child will be pretty much detached from the family age 16 onwards, definitely by the age of 18.
But I think it's also a little bit of the way we live. And I have 5 children. When the 5 are all together at home, you found, because of a lack of space as such, they were all together and they would sit with you. But now you have only one, and you've got her own room, and she's got her own space, and she's got her own everything that she doesn't need to come down. It necessitates a lot of psychological brilliance to get her to sit with you, because you cannot dictate it. You cannot say, just come down. It's got to be in different ways to do that. And it's a struggle every day to make sure that you don't confine her. I think we've given them their own homes within a home, and then we expect them to leave the comfort of their home and come and sit in our homes, which are definitely boring. So you've got to work. You've got to work through it. You really have to be clever about it and see how you can manage that. Maybe it's due to the affluence we have to be able to give them all that. Maybe to try and get them down. I mean, so far, alhamdulillah, we're managing, we sit together, sit downstairs. She works with me, but I work as well, and that's why. Maybe if I was one of those mothers who didn't have to work with my notes, with my books, with my whatever, it may have been different. I don't know. I cannot be judgmental about this. But definitely the way we have raised our children in expecting their own rooms, their own computers, everything of their own. We've given them all this because maybe we're guilty of not spending time, so we've given them the money for it. We've changed things. And now we expect them to come out of this comfort zone of theirs and come and sit with us. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. We need to have a radical change in the way we think of families.
And like you say, I think having that culture of communicating all the way up, obviously, from childhood, sitting together, eating together, and not always having the TV on, maybe even getting rid of the TV. Maybe.
When we say the Fatima Zahra, when our children came home from the mosque, would ask them, what did my father talk about? So I think when your children come home, how was your day is a simple start. I know mine will say, I need to go up and change. And I go, I need to listen to you about your day. And when I'm away and I come back, she says, Mom, the older sister, she just doesn't want to hear my talk. So to actually sit down, put everything away and hear her, not this selective hearing where I hear a bit of this and that, but actually give her total time, maybe that will help. But somehow we don't have the time to listen to our children too. I think that's the case. I mean, I've child-minded people's children. There's a family where there were 3 of them, different ages. So the daughter was older, the 2 boys were younger, and I used to look after them over weekends. And I kind of learned that because the boys demanded so much more attention because they were younger, I had to, and then the daughter would start to feel a bit left out. So I started to give her our special talk time, like after the boys have been put to bed, you have our special talk time, and you make a cup of caffeine-free tea, and you have our special talk time. But one thing I used to find was that by the time we get to our special talk time, I'm exhausted, falling asleep. But you still have to kind of
Really? And sit there and talk and listen and look at the book, and even though you're kind of like, I just want to go to sleep.
I also think involving them in your own life. I mean,
Yeah.
I make sure I talk to her about my issues or
Yeah.
problems, and makes her feel a little bit grown up. She feels like she's also looking after me. And I think that's really, really important, without being derogatory in any manner, but to be able to talk to her about it, to ask her opinion.
Yeah.
What do you think? And she said, well, Mom, but I'm only 18. I'm going, it's okay.
Yes.
Still need your opinion.
Yeah.
And that causes a conversation, because she'll come back home and say, well, how are you today? You know, is this over? What happened to this? And I think that's really, really important. And again, I learn all this from Fatima Zahra, because the way she talked to her children, the way she engaged them, even, I mean, she left the world when they were very, very young.
Yes.
But they took that through. I mean, even if you look at Karbala, look at Sayyidah Zainab, Night of Shama Ghariba. She is still talking to each one of those people that she was looking after. We might recite all this in Masayib and we cry, but there is a philosophy behind it that is phenomenal, phenomenal.
Yeah. So, and I think this is so important, because I think people are experiencing their families, the bonds starting to weaken and disintegrate. And if that happens, then, you know, the jama'ah disintegrates.
That's right.
Really. And you've effectively lost your children. And then, you know, the jama'ah started to kind of crumble at the edges. And it does take work, I think, to maintain those bonds. And interestingly, as you say about how your daughter said, but, you know, I don't know what to think because I'm 18. I remember again teaching Muslim youth, I mean, again, 16 to 18-year-olds, used to teach them literature, and I would say, so what do you think about this? And they would be silent. And I could see that, I'm not sure if my interpretation was correct, but I could see that some kind of raising has gone on where they think that, oh, you mean you want me to have an idea?
That's right.
Oh, you want me to actually think about
for
something?
myself.
Yes, you know.
Yes, I do.
What, you know, so, and obviously just in terms of teaching, you can't change that. You can't change what's going on at home. You can't change what's in the community. But it's vital, again, that, I mean, Fatima Zahra, mother of Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein, what was that interaction? You know, what was she teaching them for them to become the leaders that they became? You know, that's something to reflect on. And she wouldn't have just expected them to keep silent.
No, I think the compassion she taught them, I think the wanting to serve humanity that she taught them, that comes from a young age. I think you can't teach it anywhere else. You can send your children to madrasas, to the mosques, but that's what hour, half an hour. I mean, what are they going to pick up from there? Yeah. They are a reflection of what they're taught at home. I very particularly remember a hadith which says, if you want to see the success or the failure of a human being, look in the womb of their mothers. Now that's metaphorical, but it's there. It's definitely the mother's lap or whoever's nurtured you. Whose ideas you take back, and you're a reflection of them, a total reflection of them. And I think it's scary, because there's these children you look at and you think, are you really a reflection of me? And if you're not, then I have to do something about this.
So inshallah, we've just got about a minute before we have to conclude, but I think this has been a very good time of some really real reflection on our communities, what's happening in our communities, because also, if we have the subject of Lady Fatima Zahra, salam alayha, and what that means to us today, many people, again, will be, especially young people, will be so busy thinking, well, how is that relevant to my life? I'm even just too busy to think about it. But actually, when you do just take 5-10 minutes to look into her life and to study the traditions and look at the methods that she employed to maintain, as you say, that family unit in the face of huge pressures and difficulties. We say that we're under pressure now. Well, I mean, the pressure she was under, we can't, you know, even begin to imagine. So I want to thank you for, you know, these insights that you have given, and inshallah, we pray that we'll see you again.
I hope so. I think all I can leave you with is keep talking.
Yeah.
Stop texting.
Yes. a good tip to
Maybe.
conclude with.
Maybe that will work.
Inshallah. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for watching. We pray that this show was beneficial for you, and inshallah, we will see you again in the next program. Assalamu alaikum.